In today's video, I'm going to show you how to avoid the trap of perfectionism so that you can start getting the results that you want. Hey, I'm Michelle Reese, founder of the Align Agent Academy, where I get to help agents like you create a multi-figure business by increasing productivity and reducing the overwhelm. And today, I'm going to show you how. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode. Now, right off the bat, I want to know, who are my perfectionists listening today? I used to wear that like a badge of honor. I am somebody who just instinctively wants things done correctly. Now, those of you know who have been watching and following along that I speak a lot about DISC personality profiles. So using DISC language, I'm what you would call a high C trait. Those high compliance people like things done correctly. We want to get results, we want to do things well, but having things done accurately and correctly is something that we really thrive on and really pay attention to. So all of this is great. Like I said, it's a natural strength and instinct of mine. But when you combine that with a fear of making a mistake, and of course those people-pleasing tendencies that I've carried for most of my life, it was really a recipe for disaster. Now, when you have this sort of makeup where you've got somebody who really wants to do well and who also has a fear of doing things wrong, combined with a fear of making sure that everybody is, taken care of and everybody likes you, that really sets you up for what I call the trap of perfectionism. And that's what I really want to talk about today. But first, let me talk about what perfectionism is. It is something that I call a brake pedal behavior. Now, you guys know, if you've been watching and following along, that I always talk about brain-based strategies, and I do a lot of my talking and sharing and coaching using the brain. Our brains are not wired for success. They're wired to keep us safe, and they're wired for efficiency. So it would make sense that we have these natural mechanisms in place that really help us to make sure that we are staying safe. A brake pedal behavior is exactly that. Now, I always like to start off by sharing the story of the first time my daughter got into the car to drive. We've all been there. She stepped in the car, she settled in, she put on her seatbelt, she's looking at the rear view mirror, and all of a sudden I look down at her feet and I notice she's got one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. Now, isn't that really telling of our instincts to want to go forward but always be prepared to slow down and stop? And this is what we tend to do as business owners. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Actually, I think it's a very smart thing to do. You have to be prepared to propel forward towards your goals, but also be prepared to kind of put your foot on the brake so that you can pivot direction when you need to. But when it shows up like perfectionism, what ends up happening is your foot is constantly on the brake, and that is a fear-based response. For me, it was really, like I shared earlier, around that fear of making a mistake or doing it wrong. And so whenever I encountered a situation where I felt like, maybe I don't know enough, or I might do this wrong, or it might not look the way it needs to look, my foot immediately slammed on the brake. And that is that trap of perfectionism. Now, that's just one limiting mindset that I've shared, and that's just my personal experience, but there's a host of mindset blocks and limiting beliefs that really cause us to tip into the trap of perfectionism. Now, here's the thing that you guys already know. When you're stuck in perfectionism, it means you're not taking action, and without that action, you're not getting the results. So it's really important as a business owner to make sure that you're aware of what's in front of you, what are those potholes, and if perfectionism is one of those traps that you have a tendency to fall into, then you need to find some strategies and skills in order to overcome them, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, before I dive into the 3 tips to help you overcome perfectionism, let me know that you're liking this video by giving me a thumbs up. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell. All right, here's my 3 tips for overcoming perfectionism. And tip number 1 is to define it. Define what perfection looks like. It's really interesting, and I really started to become clear about this as I was raising my babies. We all want to do well. We all want to do our best. Nobody wakes up in the morning to fail. But it's really important as a business owner to define what this perfection looks like. What is a perfect mom? What is a perfect parent? What's a perfect relationship? What's a perfect client? What's a perfect business? We have to be able to really get clear and define what perfect looks like, because in the absence of that, we can't see our stumbling blocks. We can't see where we're striving for something that is really unachievable. And when we can't see what's in front of us, then we end up falling into those potholes and into those traps like perfectionism. So tip number 1 is to really be able to define what perfection means to you. If you want to be the best at something, what does that look like? Is the perfect parent one that never argues with their kids? We all know that that's not true. Is the perfect business owner someone who never makes a mistake? Really question what you are striving towards in terms of this definition of perfection. Once you have that in place, you're better able to see what those roadblocks might be, and you're also really better able to question whether or not it's something you truly, truly want. So define your idea of perfection. Tip number 2 is to lean into progress over perfection. Now, this one seems really straightforward, right? But you'd be surprised for those people who have a natural high C tendency, or for those who are running with some limiting beliefs and fears around making a mistake or doing it wrong, or whatever those mindset blocks are, how often we forget that progress is what leads us to the results that we want. Something done is better than something not done at all, right? We can't get anywhere if we're not taking steps. So it's really important to lean into progress over perfection. Now, that's a motto that I want you to write down and repeat to yourself often, because it's important to remind yourself that it's not about the perfection. It's not about having things done perfectly. It's about taking those steps and then refining from there. So here's what I want to ask. For those of you who were like me, that sat there with videos in their draft folder of their phone, or posts never shared, or actions never taken because you were afraid of making a mistake, because you felt like you were not ready enough, you know who you are. I want you to today make that commitment that you're going to lean into progress and just do one thing today. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to get you the end result, but do something different. When you do something different, you get different results. So tip number 2 is to really lean into progress over perfection. That's how you start moving the needle forward and ensuring that you're not getting stuck in that trap of perfectionism. All right, tip number 3 is to really get clear on what it is that you're avoiding. That is huge, you guys. Really, and if we take a look at human behavior in general, our habits in general, there's always a trigger and there's always a response. Now, we can't always control the triggers, but we can control our response. But we can't do that if we're not aware. So notice what it is that you are avoiding. What's the thought that you're having that's automatically triggering that fear response? Because remember, perfectionism is a brake pedal behavior. It is a fear response. Something is happening that is triggering this. So you want to identify what it is. What was the thought that you were having? What's the activity that you're avoiding? What is it that you're trying to protect yourself from? Really get clear on what it is that is triggering this avoidance behavior. And once you know, you're able to do something about it. Awareness really is 70% of the cure for almost everything that we go through in life. So really bringing your awareness up to get clear and define what perfection means to you, to really lean into progress instead of leaning into the perfection trap, and also really being able to get clear and understand what it is that you're avoiding. All right, so those were my 3 tips for how to overcome perfectionism. And now I want to hear from you. Is perfectionism something that you struggle with? Is this a trap that is keeping you stuck? Is your foot constantly on the brake in your business? Let me know by dropping me a comment below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss next week's video. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you back here same time, same place next week. Bye for now.